Hey, what's going on, good people? It's your boy James Harris, founder of Mental Heal, author of Man Just Express Himself. Listen, I just want to tell you guys thank you so much for the love that you continue to show me on the movement, the book, and of course now this new YouTube channel. You guys definitely did your thing with liking, sharing, subscribing. Make sure you continue to do that. I definitely appreciate you. I didn't anticipate it to grow as rapidly as it did, but we are here. So, with that being said, I will be introducing a new segment that I'll be interviewing different men throughout the community as well as in different places. And I wanted to do this so you guys can not only just hear my voice and the lessons that I provide for you guys on different knowledge and subject, but I thought it would be an interesting way for other men to tell their story of resilience and their road to their wellness journey. So we're going to be talking in these interviews about mental health, physical health, relationships, substance use recovery, early detection, different societal norms, relationships, athletes and mental health, maybe politics and mental health, and the stressors that's coming from that. And also masculinity. We might dive into that as well. So it's so many amazing men who have reached out that are open to tell their story. So, I'm gonna put something together, man. One Tuesday out of the month. I think it'll be interesting for you guys to hear that dynamic. So be willing and open to listen. I hope you guys continue to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you do that. Make sure you also get the book. Go support. With that being said, the guest that I got coming up is
All right, so my mama named me Douglas Powell. Artistically, I go by Roscoe Burnems. I am a teaching artist. I'm an educator, in addition to being a poet, spoken word artist, and as of recently, Richmond, Virginia's first poet laureate.
Man, listen, congratulations on everything you're doing. You're one of my favorite people. And I say that
Hey,
just,
man, the feeling is very mutual.
yeah, yeah, just based on you being willing to call out um, the traditional or the lack thereof or poor masculinity qualities, the misogynistic views, and just different social constructs. I definitely appreciate you being an ally within that fight in that field. So listen, your poetry is amazing. I'm a fan. Of course, Traumedy is it's one of my favorite things to show my clients. And I was happy enough to be fortunate enough that you did a screening at my spot. So listen, that is phenomenal work. So for the people who are not familiar with Traumedy, can you break that down for us?
So, Traumedy is this comedic and poetic exploration of trauma and mental health and how that attaches to my personal narrative, but largely coming from like the Black male archetype, right? Where we don't necessarily get a lot of room to discuss these things in any form, let alone in front of an audience and through these particular types of art forms. So when people watch Traumedy, which is still streaming currently on Amazon Prime, when they watch it, they're gonna get some laughs, but they're also gonna get a lot of deep insight into what trauma looks like for a boy, particularly a Black boy, growing up in a time period where they're not given the access to discuss what's happening with them, internally, right, and how they're processing certain types of trauma, how they're processing suicide ideation, depression, anxiety, the whole nine.
So when you said it was personal to you, I mean, I know your story, but for the listeners and the viewers, um, depression, suicidality, raised by a single mom. Um, what else? What else am I missing that you touched on within the series, the dynamic of the series?
So I talk about everything that I've experienced. So growing up with a single mom, I discussed briefly about like my brother getting locked up when I was 14, my dad not being around at all, and having to navigate all these things um, without really any help or anybody to kind of who even had an understanding of this. I grew up in a very traditional, like Southern Baptist kind of home. And so when you're talking about dealing with depression or ideas of suicide and things of that nature, it's very much just, oh, just pray it away. pray it away. What you need is more Jesus in your life. Or, you're just sad. Everybody gets sad. And I'm like, it feels bigger than that. Like at 13, 14, I don't know how to articulate that really. Especially in a time period where I didn't know there were words for what I was feeling. You know what I mean? I didn't know what depression was really. I knew that I knew how I felt, but I didn't have a name or there was nothing in my lexicon at the time that I could attach to the feeling. And I didn't really figure that out until high school. So it's basically this journey on stage of me navigating through that from as a youth, as an adult. And I'm very candid, you know what I mean? Like I talk about like not only my neglect as a father and how that impacted me now as a father of two, but how that manifested. I talk really candidly about addictions, right? And when I finally got to meet my father, realizing that he was an addict and he was an alcoholic. And then I talk really, candidly about sex addiction, because men don't often want to talk about sex as an addiction. And how that can be just as detrimental as any other type of addictions. Because and that goes into this narrative that men are always supposed to want sex, always supposed to have sex, and that even if you feel like you want it more than most, or you're using it to cover something up, or you're using it to feel good, or whatever the case, not even viewing that as an addiction, but as just something that men just do. It's just boys will be boys, that kind of thing. And so a lot of that stuff is really toxic. A lot of that stuff is really detrimental to us as a culture. And I want to start having these conversations about how we can fix these things moving forward, so that the boys who are watching us don't make the same bad decisions or be left kind of up to their own devices.
Again, it was a phenomenal piece, man. I'm just fortunate enough that I was there to watch it live. So would you say your poetry was a way for you to escape some of the things that you, I guess, were presented as a youth and, of course, growing up?
Yeah, definitely. And look, man, you can always let me know if I'm being too long-winded, because I'll run my mouth, especially about stuff like this. I can talk all day. Poetry, and it's funny how things kind of come full circle, because poetry and comedy were like my first two loves. In interviews all the time now, I talk about how I was able to watch Def Comedy Jam way too young. I was way too young to be watching Def Comedy Jam. But I remember seeing Dale Givens and Bernie Mac and like a list of other comedians that were hilarious. And it's something about comedy, right? There's something about comedy that makes us feel good in the moment, or we're able to laugh at things that sometimes we have a hard time even dealing with or talking about. But when somebody says, in a funny way on stage, it kind of takes some of the pressure off. And so I fell in love with that, even though I didn't pursue it until well into my adulthood. I fell in love with it really early. Poetry and prior to poetry, hip hop and songwriting was where I was first able to really articulate what was happening in my mind, right? All the stuff that I was dealing with in my head. And it came out as songwriting at first. I didn't really even know poetry could even be a career, even though we grew up reading the Maya Angelou's and the Langston Hugheses and all that kind of stuff. But so I gravitated to hip hop first, and I was a big Outkast fan, who also kind of were really candid about like growing up and like what their environment looked like, and didn't tell it in the same narrative, or didn't tell it in the same way as maybe other rappers from the South did. But I identify really heavily with that, particularly Andre 3000. And so I held on to that first. And then by the time I was in like middle school, I started writing more poetry. It sounded more like poetry. It felt more like poetry, as opposed to hip hop, or as opposed to writing raps and things of that nature. And so then by the time I got to high school, two things happened. I'm very fortunate. And let me tell you, man, the power of Black women. And I don't know where I'd be without Black women. I don't know if I still exist if it wasn't for Black women. But two things happened in school. I had a counselor named Latoya Knight, and she was the first one to to introduce the term depression to me. I was lashing out a lot at school, and teachers, principals, they're just ready to suspend you, expel you, all that kind of stuff. She was one of the only people, or she may have been the only person, to say, hey, I think you're actually depressed. I think what you're doing is lashing out because you actually feel this way. And the light bulb came on. And it still took me a while to kind of like fix some bad habits. But I now had something to hold on to and be like, okay, this is what I'm experiencing. And then the other thing that happened in relationship to poetry is I had a teacher who I'm still very close with to this very day, Cecily Gardner. She was my 11th grade English teacher, and she was somebody who I felt comfortable, and only adult outside of like my mama, who I felt comfortable reading my poetry. And so she would read it. She liked poetry. She was a real advocate for poetry. And she was like, "Yo, this is really good. You should do more with this. This is really good. You should share this. This is fantastic." And so she would force me to do all the poetry cafe things they would do at the high schools and all that kind of stuff. And that's where I got my first taste of like reading in front of people, thinking that my work was at least decent enough to share with others and things of that nature. So she gave me the first big like confidence boost. And I hit the ground running from there. Like I fell in love with it. It was already an outlet for me. And I saw some worth in it. And I think there's something to be said with that, because when you're a kid, sometimes you have a hard time finding your place in the world. Right. And especially when you're 14, 15, 16, you're like, oh man, everybody's got their thing. You know, I don't really have my thing. What's my thing? Or you think you know what your thing is, and then that changes over time, right? So that's kind of where I was. I was in this real kind of gray space where I didn't really know where I was going or what I was doing, or I thought I had something going and it didn't really feel like it was really moving. And so she was one of the first people that kind of gave me some like real direction and was like, hey, this thing that you're doing as a hobby, this thing that you're doing just to get your feelings out, this could really be something. Don't stop writing. And so that's where poetry started for me. And then like as a young adult, I started hitting the open mics and started sharing more often and found a community. And I think those things are really, really important. I think an outlet is really important, and a community, like a safe community, is really important when you're talking about dealing with mental health, right? And that's not to take away from doing the work. People still have to do the work. You still go get yourself a good therapist, right? Do the things, find the healthy coping strategies. But you know, and you're a mental health professional, so you know, like having a strong support system, a healthy community, a healthy group of friends, family, spouse, whatever, like having people who are going to hold you accountable and be there for you to support you is also like really important during this constant battle with your own emotions and such.
Man, that's definitely important, especially because you can have a support system, but you also can have like enablers. So it's important for people to be able to identify the difference. I'm glad you were able to have those two women in your life to see something in you, and particularly Miss Knight, I believe you said her name was. But
yeah,
because in our community, oftentimes men are underdiagnosed with depression, trauma, and grief. So it appears to be irritability, anger. They be, promiscuous and all this other things, reckless behavior, opposed to getting to the root of the issue, which is potentially a traumatic event or depression. So I'm glad they was able to, put that bug in your ear, one, to inspire you to keep going, as well as to assist you in identifying different things within yourself. So your pieces has not only helped you, but it has helped other people, because I was there. I seen the reaction that it got. Like I had a personal reaction. And one of my favorite pieces of yours is I Kiss My Son, which is a phenomenal piece, which is of course, untraditional piece, because at a certain age, you're supposed to stop kissing your son, or it's not proper to kiss your son, and all these other foolish things that we say. So I was happy that you shared that and was open about it, because he'll remember that. And of course, your daughter is going to remember that. And that's children. That's the thing. Like the nurturing and bonding effect is a lasting effect that they can grow from. So what inspired you to write that piece?
So it's funny because like I'm I'm the super affectionate parent. I've always been the super affectionate parent with my daughter as well. So my daughter gets all the kisses and the hugs and all that kind of stuff. And my son is my daughter's 14, my son is 4, and my son is the more emotional one. Just that's just who he is. And so he's also like a cuddler. So he wants to get on the couch with you. He wants to snuggle up and all that kind of stuff. And I'm here for all of it. I'm like, yes, give me all the hugs, give me all the kisses. He wants to climb on you and all that. So it's funny. So he's not even really like as opposed to like all the kids, he's not at that age yet where he's like, nah, come on, dad. My daughter is 14. She's the thug, right? She's she's the thug. She, what I mean, she walk around, what I mean, shoulder shrugging, and I'm like, give me a hug, give me a kiss. And she's like, nah, come on, man, I'm a G, get off me. You know what I mean? So, but I think it's really important. I think they play it off like they don't want it, you know what I mean? But when they're feeling down, the first person they come to is me, and they want to hug up and they want to they want to be held. And my daughter had these moments. She's a Capricorn. She don't believe in tears, but so she'll have these like a moment where she'll just break down, and she's just stressed out or whatever, and she'll cuddle up close, and she's just want to be held and whatever. And so I think kids need it. Kids need that. I wanted that so bad. I was raised by a single mom, and my mom felt like she had to be really hard with me and my brother, because that's how you raise boys. And she didn't want us to be soft, and she didn't want us to get teased, and she didn't want us to, she wanted us to have this kind of harder exterior. And to her credit, that's what she thought she was supposed to do, right? And she wasn't a dad, quote unquote. So she didn't feel like she felt like not having that role model in the house, that she had to step up and kind of be that. And this is what she knew. This is what she knew about that. So, and she wanted us to be prepared for a world that wouldn't be kind to us, right? Like, she's not oblivious to what we look like and who we are. You got to kind of have this kind of stone face every once in a while, because the world isn't gonna always treat you right. And so now having my own kids, I understand that, but she had a hard time finding the balance with me and my brother. And so now I'm in this quest to try to find the balance. Yeah, there's some times where I'm gonna need you to suck it up and push through it. But sometimes you don't want to do that. Sometimes you can't do that, and that's okay. You know what I mean? Let's cry it out. Let's hug. Let's kiss. I'm here for you. It's okay to break down every once in a while, but I need them to know that this is a safe space where they can do that. And that's super important for me as a parent. I want my son especially, because my daughter gets a little more room to do that, right? Because girls, right? People automatically give women that kind of room. I don't know if it's fair or not. I don't know if that's a whole nother conversation. But I know that with boys, they don't get the room to do that, right? Boys are allowed to be angry or sexual, right? That's the space that we've given young boys in how to process emotions, or the emotions that we give them. Right. But I want my son to know that there's a whole lot more. You know what I mean? You're allowed to express joy, whatever joy looks like for you. You're allowed to express, your identity the way that you want to express your identity. Express love the way that you want to express love. You have access to all these things because he's human, and I don't want to take away from his humanity. So that's a long way to say that Kiss My Son was such an important piece to my story as a father, and a huge mission statement from me as an artist, because representation, I know we hear it all the time, but representation matters. I want people to see that somebody who looks like me can say, look, I love my kids, and not just in the regular dad way that we know, where I'm all rough and tumble with them, but I love them, and I'm going to show them that I love them. I'm going to show them that I care, and I'm going to give them all the affection, and I'm going to give them all the hugs, and I'm going to wipe the tears away, and I'm going to tell them it's okay to have tears, and I'm going to help them process, and I'm going to change the narrative and change the stigma attached to emotions and feelings and fatherhood, and particularly in the Black community, where we don't have these conversations at all, where we're still kind of wrapped up in the idea that men are either stoic or absent. And I'm neither one of those things. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see more jovial Black fathers. I want to see more affectionate Black fathers. I want to see more loving, caring, nurturing Black fathers. And so I can't have that message without first displaying that myself and leading by example. You know what I'm saying?
No, definitely. Again, that's one of my favorite poems. And so I'm raising girls, you know, I'm like in my shoe closet right now because my daughter's in my office downstairs doing some schoolwork stuff. But so listen, a lot of men today are emotionally immature just based on the fact that they couldn't grow um, within certain emotions, whether that was being raised by a single mom or raised by a lot of men that were, I guess, unfulfilling, you know, like not as nurturing or just the opposite of what a respectable, positive male is. So whether that is being a womanizer or having different women or, you know, just misogynistic in a sense, you know, that emotional maturity stopped at a certain place. So I'm glad you was able to not only display that foundation for the masses, but of course your son as well. Um, so you also got a book in addition to the series that's on Amazon Prime. So talk a little bit about your book.
So my two recent collections came out right around the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, and so they kind of came out back to back. The one of them is Chrysalis Under Fire, which really tackles like the Black experience in America and how that looks. And I talk about I talk about oppression in general, right? From racism to sexism, toxic masculinity, the whole nine. And so it's this poetic investigation of what oppression looks like and the response from those marginalized groups. So I really think it's important for like people of color to read it, but I really think it's important for people who, for non people of color to read it and to process it because I think it's sometimes poetry is this can have a way of reaching people in a way that sometimes we're not able to as far as like bridging cultures and such. So the larger narrative there, the larger conversation there is about breaking down what privilege looks like, what oppression looks like, and kind of denouncing some of the stigmas that kind of come with what people look like and how people identify and the struggles that they're enduring, and then how that can kind of play both sides. I think sometimes as people of color, particularly Black men, or specifically Black men, they're really like they're huge advocates for like talking about race. When we start talking about toxic masculinity and we start talking about sexuality and we start talking about sexism and womanizing, then they're like, oh, nah, chill. Like we're not doing that over here. And I'm like, you can't talk about one type of oppression and then be oppressive. You know what I mean? Like that's just not how it goes. You know what I mean? If you're going to be an advocate for, leveling out the playing field, then let's really talk about all these things. So there's that. And so, and then my most recent collection, which came out like February 2019, is it's got a long title. It's God, Love, Death, and Other Synonyms. And so what it is this it creates this intersectionality of spirituality, our mortality, and then our romantic relationships and the intersectionality and all that, right? So not only am I talking about my personal journey with relationships, and doing a lot of talking a lot about self-love, right? Because we're talking about mental health and depression and all the things that go with that. So I talk really candidly about that, but how that affected my spirituality, like where I saw myself in religion. You know what I mean? Like my relationship with God, because I think there is a place for that. I think sometimes as a community of color, particularly if you grew up in the South and you attach religion to everything, but then like religion is supposed to be this kind of end all be all, this quick fix for all of it. And that's just not realistic. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done internally, personally, when talking about mental health and all the things that come along with that. So I discussed really candidly about my relationship to spirituality, my relationships and how my mental health has affected that. How my trauma associated to relationships has played a factor, and then and all in that, thinking about the human experience, right? Because death is a part of that. How that's affecting me overall, right? How I view myself and what legacy I want to leave, and or how I've attached myself to death when I was my most suicidal, because I think there's a lot wrapped in that together, right? When we're talking about trauma responses and what we've been dealing with, maybe as a youth or as a young adult or in previous relationships or familiar relationships, we want to kind of compartmentalize it, but it takes a while to get there. And so what happens is it gets really muddy along the way. And it does kind of leak over into all these different facets and different aspects of your life. And before you're able to kind of really pick that apart, you got to kind of find a way to get to the root and see where they intersect. And that's what the book is doing. That's what the book is doing.
Phenomenal. So you were able to use your artistry as a way for you to cope. Any tips or like tats that you can drop to somebody else as a way for them to overcome some things, whether it's to assist them with coping or finding that passion, just anything else, any tips that you can drop for the people?
So the first big tip is find a good therapist. I was on the phone with a friend of mine yesterday, and she's like, "Yeah, people are quick to say that, but they don't know the work that it takes to do that, because not every therapist is a good fit for you." And I agree, right? I've gone through about 4 therapists before I found somebody who talked in my language, right? Who was able to kind of help me process in a way that I understand, and was still helping me find like healthy coping strategies, and somebody I felt comfortable sharing with and not feeling judged. Because that comes when you're not used to therapy at all. You come in with all these preconceived notions, and you come in with all these walls and these guards up. And it's a lot like a relationship, right? It's a lot like a relationship. When you find a new relationship, you come in with these walls up. And if that person really is right for you, it takes a while to let those guards down and see if they can really love you in the way that you need to be loved, and vice versa. And so finding a good therapist is kind of like that, right? You got to find somebody who kind of talks your language. You got to find somebody who's a good fit for you. And it may take time. And so don't get discouraged, I guess is my real tip, is don't get discouraged, and find a therapist that works for you. It may be a little lengthy journey, and that's okay. But you gotta kind of figure it out as you go. And then finding pockets of peace, and I wish I could take credit for that, but a friend of mine said it on Facebook, and I thought it was cute. But pockets of peace, mapping out some time for yourself where you can just all right, let me stop. Let me not worry about every problem in the world right now. Let me not worry about whatever I think I have going on that's causing me stress, all the people that's causing me stress, or whatever. You find those moments where you can just sit by yourself and you can just chill and relax and smile and breathe, because you're gonna need that, especially with the climate that we're in now. We all kind of feel stifled in some way. People are working, either even if they're working from home, they're working 2 and 3 jobs. Their schedules are packed. Things are just really crazy right now. The economy's crazy. So like people are under a lot of stress. And so you have to figure out, you have to find those little moments where you can get away and just and breathe. And then when you do, I personally suggest having a hobby, right? Having an outlet where you can get out those emotions, right? If that's visual art and you want to like throw paint at a canvas, and scream it out, cool. Like if that's your thing. If you want to write, if you want to write music, write music. If you want to write poetry, write poetry. If you want to exercise, exercise. If you want to do all those things at the same time, like that, then do that. But find those healthy hobbies. Find those healthy hobbies that allow you to have like this, in some way, shape, or form, a creative outlet to get these emotions out. So you're not continuously bottling them up, right? So find somebody to talk to, and then find something that you can do that's yours, right? That you can hold on to process that as well.
Listen, I can interview you all day, man, but I want people to, stop, and then I want this to be the appetizer for people to go to your actual work. So whether that is looking you up on the Amazon Prime or getting your books, what's next for you?
So now that I have been named the Poet Laureate for Richmond, Virginia, I have some events and some programs that we're going to start working on in the spring, to get people kind of out and moving around and writing more and affirming themselves, very like positive programming. Once it warms up and we're able to kind of get outside and socially distance ourselves, I want to do some projects around the city that can remind people that we're going to start practicing more mindfulness. We're going to start practicing more positive self-talk. We're gonna start working that into our language. We're gonna start working that into our language. And then people will see me doing some stuff with the murals in the city too. So the murals are a big thing for Richmond. There's hundreds of them that are up, and so we have some ideas how we're going to add a little something to that. So people can follow me online on IG at Roscoe Burnems. Is ROSCOEBURNEMS. Honestly, you can search up Roscoe Burnems anywhere and I'll pop right up. I'm the only Roscoe Burnems that exists. So they can follow me on social media and see some of the things that we're doing. I work a lot with youth and helping youth use art as a way to advocate for themselves, as a way to talk about using art as a therapeutic process and using art as a way of finding agency over your own narrative. So I'll be doing more of that as the time goes on. And that's always open and accessible to the public. And so I want people to come out and start sharing their stories more.
Hey, listen, man, I appreciate you for not only being a advocate for overall ending oppression and stigma and stuff like that, but I also appreciate you for being my homeboy. Just to be in a good group and have allyship is important. So continue to keep up the good work. I'm definitely here for you. We definitely gonna hit the range again or something like that. So we're gonna
man, we need to do that for real. I need to get up with you too. We were supposed to work out and then I got caught up with stuff around the house.
Yeah. No, we're gonna figure it out, man. But I definitely appreciate you and I'm glad you was able to do this. So when I chop this up, I definitely put it out.
Awesome, man. Thank you for this, bro. This is you out here doing the good work, man. Like anything you need, you let me know and I got you.